And now, everyone, it is time we are going to go and cap this episode off with the grand finale. And on this grand finale, we are going to go and take a break from Annecy, or we might as well go and conclude all the Annecy news for now, because there is also this piece of news that happened. And yeah, this is something where we need to go and talk about, considering that not only is this the most controversial animation news of the week, but this is also, I believe so far, the most controversial piece of news related to this big name IP here. Now, it's not necessarily the show's fault per se, but it is related to what goes on behind the scenes. And yes, this is something that does involve AI. And if you think AI could not sink any lower, well, maybe it's not necessarily AI itself, but it's more in terms of the executives who want to go and use AI. And this is something that there's no other word that I could describe, or no other words that might sound like it's just taking things a little too far, other than despicable. So with that said, let's go and discuss about the Peppa Pig AI contract. Now, as you know, of course, there's going to be more new Peppa Pig episodes on the way, considering that the owners of Peppa Pig, Hasbro, is demanding to have more new cartoons and that we could keep the legacy of Peppa Pig going. However, when it was time to go and provide the actors, including the child actors who would play characters like Peppa Pig, George, and others, they brought out a new contract that had a new specific clause that they want to do. And this is where things take it a little bit too far. So going into my source on Deadline, it says here, Hasbro, the US entertainment giant that acquired the Peppa Pig brand in 2019, is asking child actors on the animated series to sign over their voices to artificial intelligence under new contract terms Deadline can reveal. Industry sources say AI clauses are now frequently appearing in kids' contracts on TV and film projects, but Hasbro's embrace on the terms of Peppa Pig has become a lightning rod for concern. So this is pretty much to say that technically Hasbro is not the only ones doing this, but this is the one that has gotten the biggest spotlight, the most prominent example of what is going on. And unfortunately, yes, when it comes to these animated projects that do involve child actors, there are companies like Hasbro who try to go and put them onto new contracts where they would go and force the kids to have their voices to be on AI. And yes, using the word force is adapt here. Like it is actually a pretty accurate way of describing it, considering that if they don't sign the contract, then they would be kicked out. It's basically telling those child actors that if you still want to keep working on Peppa Pig, then sign this contract that says that we're allowed to use your voices to train AI. Otherwise, get out. You're going to be fired. So in that regards, you can imagine how when word came out of this, it sparked massive backlash, not just from the public, but also specifically coming from the Agents of Young Performers Association, or the AYPA, in which they put out an open letter in which nearly 1,000 people have now signed. As I'm recording this, there could be more, but still, though, this letter is really getting around and collecting more and more signatures in order for companies like Hasbro to stop. Now, when Hasbro would go and comment about the situation, they did leave some words to go and say about this. So let me just go and find it over here. It's okay. Yeah, I think I found it. Now, they have, or actually, where is it? Is it that one, or would it be the other one here? No, okay, no. I believe it's right over here, in which a Hasbro spokesperson said, Hasbro is aware of the open letter circulating regarding AI clauses in children's performing contracts or children's performance contracts. We are not able to comment on specific negotiations or contractual agreements. The protection of child performers is core to who Hasbro is. It's part of our DNA. As industry standards around AI continue to evolve, we are committed to engaging with this issue in a responsible and transparent manner. Actually, I do believe it's quite earlier in which they actually said something. Yes, it's actually over here, where prior to that, Hasbro also stated, Hasbro told Deadline that it was committed to protecting child performers, adding that it wished to approach discussions about artificial intelligence responsibly and transparently. So basically a little bit of the same thing to what I previously read there. But what about the AYPA? What do they have to say? Well, I actually do have the open letter here, to which I'll read to you in full. It's not that big. Don't worry about it. To which it states here, to studio executives, producers, casting teams, commissioners, and all those shaping the future of recorded performance. We write at a moment when artificial intelligence is already the topic of much dispute, discussion, and grave concern throughout the industry. Most recently, a major studio who owns the IP for an international children's franchise producing a long-running animated television series has offered contracts to child voice actors, insisting that they agree to use the AI to the use of AI, thus allowing them to use the child's voice in all commercial assets within their franchise. The refusal to remove this clause with an attitude of take it or leave it has led us to write this letter to make it clear that this will not be accepted and to bring this matter to the attention of the wider industry. Where the performer is the child, consent must be treated with the greatest of care. Children cannot provide fully informed legal consent, and a parent or guardian's approval should never be used as a blanket license to capture, clone, train, or reuse a child's voice indefinitely. Any agreement involving a child's voice should be fully exempt from all AI usage. No child should have their future professional identity shaped by an AI model created before they were old enough to understand its consequences. Their voice should not become a permanent commercial asset before they have the legal and personal capacity to decide for themselves. We, the undersigned, urge you to commit to responsible industry practice. Collectively, we reject all contracts that require child performers to surrender voice rights indefinitely and without limits. So that's basically the big thing that is going on, is the fact that Hasbro is trying to force AI onto these kids with these new contracts. And like I said before, this really does feel like a new low with companies desperately trying to normalize AI. And I just find it to be absolutely disgusting with what Hasbro is trying to do and forcing upon it onto kids. Like, one thing I'll just say right now is that AI is not in the position that the tech bros think it is. It's not in a spot where it is fully ready to go and actually to go and like be a part of our future, where it's part of our social norms. And that's mainly because the tech is not as grand as they would claim it is. Because right now, they're always selling on the promise of what it could be, what it can do for people, and how it could be a common part of our lives, when the tech itself is not ready to even be at that point. I don't believe that we're going to see that in our lifetime, that the AI tech could even be at a point where it is ready for proper commercial use. And not to mention that, considering that this is all tech related and that it's all going to be collected in data centers and stuff like that, I can't help but feel like there are going to be those worst case scenarios where that there are going to be hackers out there in which they can go and like take whatever is in those data centers. Hold on a sec. Excuse me, just need to go and clear that out. Ooh, another new fish. Anyways, as I was saying, like, there are going to be those hackers out there. They're going to collect whatever is in those data centers and they'll go and use it for their own purposes. And knowing how the internet can be, that can be extremely dangerous. Twitter is already a very prominent example in which they still have AI tools in which you can go and manipulate whatever image you could go and find that someone uploaded onto the website. And there have been people who would go and use that in order to go and create CSAM. Now, why is that not a factor that would make the grand majority of people to go and immediately quit Twitter and make the factor of having a Twitter account be considered very taboo and something that should legitimately get people canceled for? That I don't know why people aren't doing that as of yet, but this is a prominent example of why right now AI should not be a tool that should be trusted, especially when children are involved. And speaking of children, this is also another factor of why this honestly feels absolutely cruel. Because the thing is that when you're trying to force that upon children, the thing is that you're really going after the most vulnerable and try to take advantage of them for your own personal gain. Because when we say that kids cannot provide consent, this does not just mean in terms of sex. This also means in terms of stuff like this, like with anything that involves some legal action or, getting into like a full-on job. I could speak as an actor that whenever I do see stuff like contracts or when you want to go and register, like to go and submit your audition and stuff like that, there will always be a section where if you would go and you have to go and like sign something, like rather it be an NDA, there's always another section where there is a signature for a parent or a guardian, because if they have to go and give these contracts to kids, they need to make sure that if these kids are under 13 or in some cases under 18, they need a parent or guardian to go and sign so that they can also have the approval to know that, a proper adult also checked on what's in the contract to make sure that everything feels sound and that this is okay for the kid that they are protecting. There is always that in order to make sure that a child's safety, especially when it comes to working in show business, whether it be working for like a movie or a TV show or anything like that, we need to make sure that the kid's protection is like amongst one of the top priorities. Otherwise, it would be like a hell of an emergency and pure PR nightmare fuel if anything goes wrong with that. So in that regards, going into a position where like you want to make the kids sign a contract that would make them give their voice away to AI. I know I keep saying this again, but that really is cruel. It really does feel like you're just trying to take advantage of kids, because kids are not going to understand the full consequences of having your voice be put onto AI, in which they would go and other people could go and use it however they want. And this is not even to mention about the consequences where they would go and use that voice however they want, and they could be in a full-on position where they could just discard the actors. I don't need, they wouldn't need the kids anymore because they already got the voice through AI. They could just go and do whatever they want. And I'll even add, even as an actor, like I have been offered a bunch of gigs in which I would have to use my voice to train AI, whether it be with my own voice or develop a character voice. I steer clear from that. I don't care how many thousands of dollars they would go and give me. I know that the big consequence is that they'll use that voice again and again, and I wouldn't get much because they would also go and demand a full buyout on it. I mean, if you're going to be using my voice on whatever project you want to hire me for, I want to be sure that every time the voice is used, like, I want to be paid again and again. I want to make sure that, like, if you need my voice again, either hire, bring me back on board, or if you're going to reuse the same voice lines again and again, then I would better get residuals, because that's how it works in the business with actors, is that, when you do get that job, you got to make sure that you could sustain it as a proper business. And a big part of it, of course, is with residuals or to be hired again for another job. And that's why with actors, we have been fully against AI, because it has been a threat to our livelihoods. And especially now that they're going after children, this is where we see how the morality of this aspect has now hit a brand new low, and why this is more of an emergency where we got to stop AI from being fully integrated into acting gigs and stuff like that. Now that we are starting to see that with companies like Hasbro, they're at the point where, it's not beneath them to go and try to use AI so that they could go and copy the voice of children so that they could then go and do whatever they want. That is a line that it should never be crossed. It's one of those things that you would think that everybody should know, nobody should go and do that. But then you're going to get those sociopathic executives that will try to cross that line and see if they could go and take advantage of children in order to capitalize on the whole AI trend. So yeah, honestly, this is something that as an actor, I also want to go and put my piece onto it, where this is just taking too far, and that honestly, Hasbro in general just needs to back out from AI, regardless of whatever use they want to do, whether it be for voices or even for animation or for anything. It's best to go and just step away from AI. If you really do care about the children, if you care about their safety, then the kids should be way more of a priority than AI. If the kids and their parents say no to AI, then you should go and respect that. I think it really is a moment where we need to put Hasbro in a position where we need to ask them, what is it that they care more about? Do they care more about the child actors, or do they care more about AI? Because if they feel, if they would go and force them in a position where they're threatening their jobs as the voices of the characters, where they're threatening that in order to make them sign a contract in order to use AI, that really does highlight that the whole comment of like, oh, we care about their safety, that's our top priority, it just feels like a massive lie. If you really do care about the kids, drop the AI nonsense, because honestly, this is something that not only do the grand majority of people don't want, but it's something that no child should ever be associated with, especially with the current state of how AI is right now. And with that said, now I would like to pass this on to the chat wall, and I want to go and ask you all, what are your thoughts on the whole Peppa Pig controversy? Regardless of how angry this may have gotten you, I'd like to know what you think on all this. All right, so let's see now. I get that they want to use AI for the sake of consistency with the voices of the child cast of Peppa Pig, but I'm calling it a full-on scam. Companies should not make child actors sign voices away like this is The Little Mermaid. AI cannot be used if you want to keep their cast and avoid recasting a child due to them hitting puberty. I feel like Hasbro is taking a new low. They are using AI to treat kids like they are toys. Exactly. And it's one of those things that honestly, like, yeah, it's one of those consistent changes that has to keep on going, but you don't see many people actually complain about that. Like when you go and watch like Despicable Me, for example. Like with every Despicable Me movie, or at least with most of them, they got to keep replacing the voice of Agnes so that she could still sound like a little girl. Or there are some other examples as well, like you know, like you got a Gumball, for example, where in different seasons the kids playing like Darwin and Gumball and stuff like that, like they would often have to go and change things up so that the kids can still sound like kids. And from there, you don't hear people complaining about it. You don't hear people being so upset about like, oh, the voices aren't really that consistent. What are they doing in the studios? Like, they understand the situation that if you're going to be hiring kid actors, then you got to keep in mind that sometimes you got to switch them up once puberty would officially go and hit them. So yeah, honestly, I feel like Hasbro is trying to go and fix a problem that was never even a problem in the first place. All right, let's see what other comments that we have here. It really sucks that Hasbro is falling from grace ever since Chris Cox took over. The fact that they want kids to sign the contracts for them to use their voice for AI is not only immoral but very despicable. I do hope they pull back hard because it's absolutely disgusting. I love the shows Hasbro they make and support creatives, but man, the executives are reaching new low with that action. Yeah, exactly. This is honestly beyond disgusting. Seeing that Hasbro would want to go and use AI for children's voices is flat out wrong and cruel, especially with how children can be vulnerable and exposed to this kind of stuff is just low. Seriously, this is why I'm hoping sooner rather than later, the AI bubble can finally burst so that we can finally move on from this whole AI fad. Yeah, we don't know when, but I mean, at some point it's gonna burst, right? Oh, freaking God. Child actors get abused a lot. This is the contract that's going to hurt them in long term. These children are unfortunately the breadwinners for their families, and as sad as gross as it is, part of why actors wanted AI protection is so they can have a job. Imagine if the stage parent just signed and realized their kid wouldn't get money anymore once they go through puberty, but their voice is still used because of the AI being trained. Like, this is gross for the actors, but evil for child voice actors. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, imagine the scenario if they would actually go and do that, where at one point for like a few seasons of like Peppa Pig, for example, you would get a child actor voicing the character. And then once they hit puberty, suddenly their voice gets replaced by AI. And it just really doesn't sound different. And there's just an aspect to it where it really is just gross. And it doesn't matter for what it is. Even if Hasbro doesn't plan on doing that, and they just want to do it for like smaller projects, like for toys or for commercials and stuff like that, that still doesn't change that you're taking jobs away from that kid. So, or for any kid who would have the opportunity to voice Peppa Pig. So in that regards, yeah, there's no winning strategy in terms of using AI in order to keep the voice of a child alive for the sake of that consistency. It just, no, there's no side where it would work out. There's no side where it makes you sound good. Let's see, what other comments do we have? Let's see now. Sleazy executives and demanding greedy parents, the arch enemies of child actors. Yeah, you got that right. Let's see. Who's hungry for some pork chops? So what's the grand finale about? Oh, we're talking about Peppa Pig and that controversy, huh? But seriously though, what an absolute despicable action Hasbro has decided to do instead of actually carrying their actors, especially child actors. All they are doing is endangering the kids' lives and safety, and endangering the kids' lives and safety. And I know kids are way smarter than that. So yeah, companies need to stop defending AI, or else this is going to get worse. Yeah, I mean, like at this point, I don't know, like, how can you go lower from this? I'm sure there is a way, but again, this honestly just feels like a brand new low with what executives want to do with using AI. And I'm sure that this is going to be repeated where people are going to be pointing out that this is like one of the worst ways that people can go and use AI. It's like right up there with Twitter and Grok, where it's an example of like why we shouldn't have AI in our society in this day and age. All right, I think I got time for reading one more comment. And it says here, this is a nitpick, but can we please put a dot between A and I? Because it's making the name of my favorite singer, Weird Al, look cursed. All joking aside, this is so disgusting that I can't even call AI slop anymore. It's AI diarrhea. Even slop can taste good given the right ingredients. Ask the real pigs. This is unedible. This is vomit-inducing. It's moments like this where I'm glad that Bluey's kids' voice actors were uncredited. Yeah, I mean, like, at least with Bluey, like, we're not hearing that kind of controversy, and I hope this is not happening, in which hopefully AI is staying away from Bluey. But for now, let's just hope for the best that Hasbro is not going to be considering to use AI on Peppa Pig whatsoever. I mean, people are already annoyed by Peppa Pig right now. Imagine how people will feel when they would go and hear AI Peppa Pig. Oh God, that's like a whole nightmare in itself.